Today is focused on sharing our experiences, lessons learned, challenges that we've experienced in these synergy scaling projects. Our hope is that by providing multiple perspectives on those, that we'll develop a deeper understanding. This morning we're starting from this perspective of implementers, those that have adopted and adapted these innovations. I realized yesterday we tend to be a bit casual sometime, both in terms of introducing Chris Deedy and Jim Deering here. For those that have not met them or know much about it, would really invite you to look at their bios. Jim is senior scientist at Kaiser Permanente. The interesting part is he is also co-director for Health Dissemination and Implementation Research. We were intrigued when we first heard that. We continue to be intrigued with his wealth of knowledge and experience, and look forward to his working with a panel today of implementers.
Thanks, David. This is a 40-minute session. We'll follow this with questions and answers if you'd like to have some things explained further or contribute your own experiences. And that'll bring us up to 10 o'clock, at which time we'll have a 10 to 15-minute break, followed by a 30-minute session by Rebecca and Alan that builds on this current session. This session is about learning from implementers of synergy projects, but I'd like to see this session right now address a topic that's a bit narrower than just learning from implementers, because I think all of us have come to realize within the 3 years of synergy so far that there's an awful lot that we need to pay attention to of the activities, the things that implementers are doing with programs, with first-generation programs, as they then implement those programs or adapt those programs into what I would call second-generation, or some cases, third-generation programs. They're modifying, they're adapting as they go in many cases. And if there's one theme that I've heard a lot from center staff, from staff of the 13 centers in Synergy, it is that adaptation is not only frequent by themselves and by others, like our implementers here, but quite often desirable. Adaptation is desirable. And so I'd like to explore both those ideas with this set of 4 people, but also more specifically, how to best learn about the activities of implementers and the results, the intended results of implementation activities. So Elaine Craft, an hour ago, made the distinction in introducing a 3-part skit between a problem and its solution. And that's, I think, a perfectly appropriate way to think of synergy programs. This is familiar territory to all of you. The activities that you carry out, the processes that staff do, these, when measured, comprise what we often call process evaluation measures. And they tend to be the types of things, the types of objects, of activities that we can most easily capture information about or capture data about for the purpose of reporting back to a sponsor like the National Science Foundation, or for a second-generation implementer to report back to a Synergy center about what they've done with a particular program, including maybe how they've adapted it. Those are process evaluation measures. But as all of you would probably agree, the only reason that you carry out processes is to obtain desirable effects, right? Intended outcomes. So we're always interested in possible ways of best capturing outcome data. Data about positive or negative or neutral effects of the things that implementers do. So I would like this panel of implementers to address both of these possible types of data, and then, this is a hard question, but possible ways of gathering data, possible ways of getting feedback, possible ways of collecting information, both about the things they do, process evaluation measures, and also the results of the things that they do, outcome evaluation measures. I have sitting with me here 4 implementers of Synergy projects. To my immediate left, Carl Dietrich, representing CTC in the Mentored College program. To my immediate right, Michael McKeever, representing MPICT and the Synchronous Online Instruction Program. Nancy Kruger, to my far left, representing the Bridge to Biotech, and she is based at St. Louis Community College in Missouri. And then Angela Wall, representing SCATE and the Technology Gateway. Let me frame this discussion very briefly from a research perspective or a literature perspective. And all I mean by that is that when you pick up a journal article, for example, there is a new journal that many people who do the kinds of things that I do read. This journal is called Implementation Science. And it's all about conceptualizing implementation processes. And one of the main arguments, long-running, probably forever unresolved arguments among people who study implementation, so-called implementation scientists, is between fidelity and adaptation. And in the education literature, in the higher education and the K-12 literature, this presumed dialectic, this problem, this difficult question between program fidelity and program adaptation has not been resolved, I don't think, very adequately. I think we have some possible answers, but it's one way to think about the challenge of implementers of synergy programs. They're constantly faced with knowing. Someone like Carl is constantly faced with knowing what the key components are of the program that he's implementing at Lansing Community College, and yet also knowing the ways that he has found to most productively make it work on your own campus or on the campuses of other folks who you talk with about the same program. And so this, oftentimes, fidelity and adaptation plays out as a tension. But in that discussion, in that long-running argument in journals like Implementation Science, there's almost always the presumption that adaptation will necessarily decrease the effectiveness of whatever the program is in question. That is, that fidelity is maximum effectiveness. And we only know that by original study, original measurement of something that was conducted by a center like BioLink of a particular program. And since we haven't studied the effects of something like another program, the Technology Gateway, at a lot of different sites, the only evidence we oftentimes have of its effectiveness is from the original site, the original case of implementation. So we consider that fidelity. That's the kind of the egghead research perspective on fidelity and adaptation. And any adjustments to that, any adaptations to that, will necessarily detract. When in fact what happens oftentimes, and I believe that this is many of our experiences, is that adaptations productively change a particular program. So I'll stop talking, and I'd like to invite our four implementers here to discuss not just to help us learn what they've been doing, but to address the more specific question of how to best learn. I mean, this is a methodological question, right? How to best learn about the things that they're doing. Whether those are carried out with what we'd call fidelity, or whether those are carried out as what we'd call productive adaptations. How? How can a Synergy PI, how can a Synergy Center staff member, how can your own colleagues and staff members, how can you best collect evidence to be able to eventually report to an organization like NSF, or to your own chairperson, or in an article that you may want to co-author about the results of carrying out your activities?
It's the first time we heard that's what we're doing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's adaptation, isn't it, Mike?
So we're adapting to adopt Jim's method here. Fidelity is out the window as far as we're concerned. There are a lot of different techniques, and I won't go through the different things that we've done over the past year in order to encourage adoption of our technique and our model in improving ICT education. There's all kinds of things that we've tried over the past year and are continuing to in order to encourage people to adopt a model. And what I found is that human beings are really lousy at risk assessment in general, and that we all are a risk. What we're trying to do is to get people to change, and change is scary. And rather than dealing with an appeal to analytics, that we need to deal with an appeal to emotion and what is really cool about what we're doing, and give them incentives on an emotional level to make a change and to take a risk. And I've seen that in industry promotions as well. We use Blackboard Collaborate as our tool in California, many of you are familiar with, and I've seen recent materials from the Blackboard company encouraging, or they have a toolkit for adoption of their model, and in it they include a voucher for $100 for holding a pizza party for people to get used to this platform. So they're not appealing to improved student outcomes, they're appealing to the gut. You know, feed them and they will come. So that's my initial comment on that, and I have some ideas about data collection.
I may, I'm not sure, be one of the only ones on this panel that is not a career educator. And so, Joyce, you're shaking your head, yes. When we look at how effective is something, we don't ask ourselves. I mean, we do look at data, grades, and success rates in subsequent classes and that kind of thing, but we go to our employers and we say, did this make a successful graduate, you know, on the job? Because that is really our goal, is to put out somebody who's going to be effective on a factory floor. And I'm speaking from an engineering technology, you know, standpoint. So, you know, maybe we're kind of leapfrogging over these other collection places, but we feel like that the most important thing is, what are we giving to our external customer, which is employers? And we have gotten just feedback that is phenomenal from these graduates. And we had one case where a student, he had worked for somebody prior. He was an older student, got laid off, came back on WIA, and he worked for the same manager again at a different place because the original factory shut down. So the manager moves, the student comes back to us 6 months later. I'm getting him an internship with the same manager he had, but at a different company. And the man calls me, the manager, and asks me, what have we done to this person? I'm serious. And I'm like, I didn't even know he was mad with me. I didn't do anything to him that I know of. He goes, oh, no, he's not mad with you. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? What did I do to him? And so he starts telling me, you know, this person was always a good employee. He was always on time, dependable, blah, blah, blah. But now he's a leader, and as an intern, he's telling permanent employees what to do, and they're doing it. They're coming to him for direction. And so, I mean, that's like, it's a pre and post test on the job that we didn't even know was going on until that person called me. And he felt so strongly about the changes that he saw in this particular person that he wanted to come to our faculty convocation, and he did, and give a talk to everybody, no matter what they were teaching, whether it was history or, you know, IT or whatever, about the changes that he had seen that he attributed to the technology gateway and the problem-based learning delivery method. And so, you know, we were kind of like, what more proof do we need? Because that went straight to the end goal. And so we've been implementing it ever since. It's been about 5 going on 6 years now. And we have seen data that went up in the project classes, which are our core classes. We've seen success rates go up in math and English and peripheral classes like their computer information system class. And we have seen internships just in industrial systems, that's what I'm in charge of, go from like, I think I had 4, and in 5 years now I've got about 25. And the employers are calling me. They have my cell phone number. I get calls like twice a week wanting interns and full-time graduates. And a lot of the word of mouth for the employers came from the one manager who said, you need to call her because she's putting out people who can solve problems and get things done without you babysitting them. And so, you know, how do you collect that data? Ask those employers. Send them a survey, I guess. They're probably used to getting surveys, but, you know, I don't know that we need the intermediate data because it's going straight to the crux of it.
I love Angela's response here because prior to this session, she insisted in talking with me that she had nothing to say on this. So she gave a terrific answer about outcome data, right? Or what you call going to the end goal.
Yeah, I guess you would call that anecdotal data, but who cares? I mean, they're getting jobs. I'm sorry, who cares? They're getting jobs. They're being sought after. Most of them have a job before they graduate. We have like a 98% employment rate. If that doesn't speak for itself, you know, I don't know what other data we can collect that would tell us something different.
So let me play devil's advocate.
Okay.
Let's keep her talking.
Let me get a good grip here.
Let me play devil's advocate. So I agree. If one has to choose between outcome data and process data, between seeing if you have an effect with what you're trying to do and documenting what you're doing to try to get that effect, that you choose the prior. You choose the outcomes, right? You choose outcome data over process data.
Yes.
But the problem with that, at least from my perspective, is that the technology gateway changes over time. It's not the same program in Generation 1 as it is in Generation 2 as it is in Generation 3. It's allowed, maybe even encouraged, to vary through adaptation, to fit the new context, right? I'm going to get a lot of nodding heads in here. So if it's changing along the way, how can I then know what explains those observed effects?
Well, with Technology Gateway, we followed it pretty dang closely, but we are very much like Florence Darlington. You know, we're in the South. It's a rural community, manufacturing, agricultural based, and so our needs clear. You know, they were pretty much in line with the needs the reason that Technology Gateway had been developed to begin with. And so a lot of our adaptations are very superficial. So I'll give you an example. I had a student, and I was speaking with somebody about this yesterday. He went to a job interview for a job that was going to start out at around $50,000 a year, which in our area is, you know, a lot of families of 4 live on that. And he went to work with an earring, I mean not to work, but to the interview with an earring in his ear. Well, we're also in a very conservative place, rural, conservative. And he did not get past the front door, even though his resume had tendered him an interview because the earring was in his ear. So the very next project we did, we changed grooming and appearance and how they dressed from being worth 10 points to being worth 30 points. And that adaptation was to make the point of, you know, here, this is what you're going to have to do to get an interview. And so we put some more emphasis on that for one project. So that was kind of like a little deviation, and then we came back to the original rubrics for the rest of the project, but just to make a point, if that makes sense. And so we did an adaptation to solve a problem that we saw, but we didn't stick with it. We figured that problem solved, let's get back on track. So does that make sense?
It does make sense. Thank you. Carl? Nancy?
Yeah. Okay. Those of you that know me know I don't need this microphone, so I'll try and hold it way out in front. But anyway, getting back to the adoption and adaptive issues is that, I'm going to take a step back for just a minute. If you ask 10 people what convergence means, you're probably going to get half a dozen different answers. So part of what we were doing as well was educating others on what convergence is and what the technologies are. It wasn't that long ago where you had a separate voice for your video, or excuse me, you had a separate network for video, voice, and data. And now the technology has improved so much, one network should be able to handle all of that stuff. So how does a technician set all that stuff up so that you can do all these things over a single network? And that is mostly what we're concentrating on with the grant. Originally, it was video, voice, and data. And the big piece of this, as we're spreading out, as we're scaling it, is that the first question is, well, do you have a business need for this technology? Is there someone, you're going to educate the students to get them ready for this stuff, but is there a job out there for them? So before you can go ahead and just roll out all these new technology courses, put a business reason behind it. You know, is this what business is asking for? And what we had done last year, we did do the survey. Okay, it was an online, quick 10-question survey to find out what businesses are interested in, what would they like skills to see in our students for when they graduate, and then we also have quarterly advisory meetings on the national and local level as well. And originally it was video, voice, and data, but now we have to adapt because the technology is including streaming video and storage management. RFID died on the vine, so we're not even going to go there. But all these new technologies, virtualization, and so originally we had video, voice, and data, but now we have to adapt to the new technologies because, as everyone here knows, things are a lot different in the way of technology than they were 5 years ago. We're teaching students things now that didn't even exist 5 years ago. So as adapters, we have to be able to adapt what we're hearing from the business in order to be able to teach those right courses. Okay? In the way of scaling, what we had found out is that a centralized management approach just didn't work. It worked for a while, but then the network of colleges, which is our Convergence College Network, was growing to the point where, in order for it to properly scale, shared responsibility had to happen. So part of that brainstorming process that we had here at previous conferences, the Convergence College Network Advisory Board was created, and it is made up of myself and 3 others who you met the other day, who basically, subject matter experts, whatever you want to call that, and get together locally with business to find out what their needs are. Originally, we'll call it a curriculum in a box, or if someone signed up for the network, they could just go online, download the curriculum, and teach the class. But what works in California may not work in Texas, which doesn't work in Michigan, which doesn't work in Wisconsin, and so on and so on. So as more colleges came on board with the Convergence College Network, we would make ourselves more of a resource than anything else. Here's some curriculum, here's what we struggled with rolling out these programs and these courses, and we're just a resource for the new people coming on. And again, and the way technology changes, we just have to adapt to whatever business says that we need.
Carl, this is great, and your point, this is a very important point about centralization and decentralization of control over the intervention. That's a right way to put it. Is there an in-between there? Because while what works in Michigan may not work in Florida, maybe what works in Grand Rapids works fairly well in Kalamazoo? Is there a regional or sub-point at which some degree of centralization makes sense because it might be more efficient?
Yes. Empowerment only goes so far, I think maybe is what we're looking for here, okay? And again, when we recruit and try and bring other colleges into the network, we also want them to realize that we have this here, but based on your local business need, this is the way that you should move forward, okay? When the process was decentralized earlier, there's a lot of, I don't want to word this. There was, I don't want to go back to empowerment again, but basically, here's what we need, here's the outcomes, this is what we want to do what you think's best and keep us in the loop as to what's going on. So the decentralized approach really made a difference in the process. Instead of having, everything centrally located and then you get, buried in bureaucracy, et cetera. And with that distributed model, it's much easier to get courses off the ground based on what the local need would be.
Thank you. Nancy?
My program is with BioLink, and our program is called Bridge to STEM and Life Science, and is to train entry-level lab assistants to work in a life science type of laboratory. We are targeting undereducated individuals, minority, diverse individuals, and dislocated workers primarily. So our challenge has been to take a program which we have been given by City College of San Francisco and adapt it to our circumstances in St. Louis. One thing that we did was we had gone to the Summer Fellows session last June that was put on by BioLink and learned about their program, how it works, the concepts and everything behind it, and decided that we were going to start our program in January, start with the January semester. Originally, we were going to start in August, and we realized that was just going to be impossible. There was too many things to do, too much preparation. So January was even kind of a stretch to get it done there, but we did. One thing that we did was we had access to all the course material from City College of San Francisco, but we couldn't use that exactly the way it was because that would entail doing curriculum development and submitting that to our college for approval. And as we all know, that usually takes quite a long time. So we decided that instead that we would use existing courses and tweak them a little bit so that they would meet our needs as much as possible. So that's what we did. We did include one new course, and our program ended up being 6 courses, 19 credits in one semester, which is quite a bit for the students to have to absorb. We divided it into 2 8-week sessions, so they had 3 courses each 8-week session. Even that was quite a bit. So we have incorporated their material and their concepts and the ideas and the recommendations, but we have adapted it to our situation in St. Louis, the structure of our college, to do it that way. We had to expedite things in order to get things started in January. So that was really the only practical way to make that happen. We put our program together so that the students earn a certificate of specialization once they pass all the courses at the end of the semester. We started with 12 students. We had 4 students drop out basically for personal reasons. We had a couple of students drop out for medical reasons. And we finished with 5 graduates receiving their certificate of specialization out of the original 12. So that's our 42% success rate. Sounds pretty good. I would like to see it be better, but I guess for a first start, my boss keeps telling me, hey, we did all right. In terms of testing and evaluation and reporting, one thing that we're doing, because we've only had 1 class and we just finished it, we haven't really gotten to the data part of things yet, other than our 42%. We give work keys testing before and after the course, and then for our college, we use Compass placement testing to make sure that the students are eligible to go into the developmental courses that we start with during the semester. So, and then we will be tracking these students as they continue. Some students are going to continue into the Associates Biotech program that we offer, so that'll be easy to track them. We'll know what additional courses they're taking, what grades they're getting, see how they do in the gatekeeper courses, and these are things like chemistry, more advanced biology, and more advanced math courses, because those traditionally are so difficult for everybody. And so we'll be tracking them and seeing, are they successful? Do they, the persistence aspect of things, do they complete their program and get their associate's degree? Some students will be going out and working right away. They're looking for jobs right now. 1 or 2 already have jobs, not quite exactly what they want, but they're working on it. So we will find out what students are working and working in their fields and seeing what happens with them. We will track them over time also. Some students will be working and then also taking courses on a part-time basis. So we're hoping for that. Our ultimate goal is, as we have more students, we track data for all the students that apply to our program with the work keys and the Compass testing. And as we go through and have additional classes, we're going to be doing data analysis on all the work keys and the Compass scores and success outcomes for the students. Did they receive their certificate? Are they working? Are they working in the bioscience field? Are they continuing on with their education? so that we can find out that information. My program is funded through Workforce and Community Development. We actually have a federal grant for it for 2 cohorts of classes. So our primary interest really is getting the students out into the world of work and getting them jobs. So that's sort of our measure of success. We'll see what happens.
Nancy, another great example of outcome data, student tracking data. To me, that sounds wonderful. And I still have the same kind of question for you that I had for Angela, which is about an initial response. So I'm trying to think from the position of a reviewer at a place like NSF. I'm going to read about this great program. I'm going to read it's been replicated with great success at other sites. This all sounds fantastic. And then my question, of course, it's the same question, is what led to those great results? Are they the same factors that were in the original Bridge program? Have they modified them as it's been carried out in subsequent sites like St. Louis Community College? It's an important question because, of course, there may be hundreds, there may be thousands more JCs, maybe high school programs that would be interested in further adapting a Bridge program for their students. And they may need to know, right? Oh yeah, of course it worked in San Francisco, but this ain't San Francisco. So I need to know how it's going to work here. And so it gets partly back to process evaluation measures. And I'm thinking in particular of a project I just recently completed. We studied implementation in 71 organizations nationally. And we would call them on the telephone and ask them usual kinds of questions. Did you do this? Yes. Did you do this? Yes. Did you do this? Yes or no? But then when we went to a few of these sites that we had purposively selected, usually because they were either really good or they reported being really kind of bad at implementation, we wanted to understand those two things. So we go out and observe, and lo and behold, those that said they were doing things, of course, we're doing that, they weren't doing it. I mean, so self-report can sometimes differ quite a bit between, let's say, trained expert observation. You guys would all be expert observers, especially those at Synergy Centers who created these programs, because you know how they were originally carried out. And so, again, it gets back to a methodological question. How can someone like Tressa best learn the quality or the issues of implementation as they're being carried out at subsequent sites? If she calls on the phone, she may get, yes, of course, oh, we're doing that, just like you trained us. But if she were to go, she might have a different perception. Maybe not, but sometimes it works that way. How could she best learn?
When we started on our program, I went to dinner with some other people that had gone through their own Bridge programs previously. And my big question was, okay, what worked for you and what didn't work for you? So I was just trying to learn from their advantages and things that didn't go well for them, just so I could anticipate a little bit better. We knew right away that our program wouldn't be exactly the same as what's done at the Bridge to Biotech at City College in San Francisco, just because our college is structured a little bit differently. Our student population is a little bit different in terms of its diversity and the elements there. And we could adopt a lot of the basic concepts, but adopt them and change them to fit what we needed in our specific circumstances. So that's the adaptation. One thing that we did was we included tutoring time in our classes every day. We had a pretty rigorous schedule. We told the students that when you sign up for this, you're going to be spending 16 weeks here, and it's going to be from 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. That's a pretty daunting schedule for anybody. Because we were cramming 3 courses into 8 weeks and doing that twice, we figured they needed some support, and that again was one of the things that we learned from the Bridge to Biotech program at City College. So we decided to incorporate tutoring into our program. So we had anywhere from 1 hour to 2 hours of tutoring built into their daily schedule. One thing that we learned the hard way is that if you have tutoring at the end of the day, there's people that don't always stick around for tutoring. And amazingly enough, the people that don't stay for tutoring are probably the ones that need it most. Okay? So this time around, I am revising the schedule, and we are going to put tutoring in the middle of the day. They will have another class after that. At least we're going to do that for part of our classes. And we are also instituting attendance requirements. You have to be present in class 90% of the time. You have to be present in tutoring 90% of the time. If you are not able to meet that requirement, you will not qualify for your certificate of specialization. A little bit of a harsh stick, but there's a carrot at the end. So we also are trying to recruit students that are motivated and that really want to do this, and we tell them it's not going to be an easy semester. We actually do a personal interview, and we select our students. We do not have open enrollment on our program. We do a selection of students, and we have tried to select students that really, really, really want to do this because they know that in one semester, and somebody else is paying their tuition and providing their books, this is a really good deal for them. And it can prepare them for certainly a good career and also get them going on the rest of their education. So one thing that I tell them is, hey, we're giving you free tuition, we're giving you free books, we're giving you this golden opportunity. In return, you have to give back to us. You have to be here every day, all day, pay attention, do your homework, and work hard at this. You know, it's kind of a give and take thing.
Nancy, these are excellent, excellent examples. Thank you very much. So one more brief question, and I need a brief answer for you, okay. Which is, do you document changes like adding a tutoring component and then changing its position within the course of the day? Do you document that? Is that tracked maybe even over time so that you could see how student performance might vary by perturbations you make to the program itself?
We've only had one course so far, and that was the class that just finished in May. So that was a class that had like the tutoring at the end of the day. Our next class starting in August will have tutoring during the middle of the day, so we'll be able to do a comparison between the first class and the second class. And that's really about all we can do on that score.
Great, that's wonderful. I've got a Michael question, staying in California, and it's probably at the risk of repeating myself, but I still think it's a very important question because evaluation data is so important to continuing to have investments in programs like these. I'm thinking of Pierre. I'm thinking of Pierre in San Francisco. And I'm thinking of Michael way far north up Highway 101 in Sonoma County.
Napa.
Is it right, Napa?
Well, that's where I live.
You live in Napa, but you work in Sonoma.
I do.
You do. You have to go over the hill. Yeah.
I know, suffer.
It is. You've got a feel for this guy.
Through the vineyards, and yeah, it's.
So this might not describe the relationship you have with Pierre and his staff, but it does describe relationships that I'm somewhat familiar with. And what I'm wondering is, how does Pierre's staff, how can they best learn about what you're doing and the effectiveness of your work while being as least obtrusive as possible, without bothering you too much, because we're all busy. And evaluation data collection, that's kind of a hassle, at least it can be. But how can they best gather that learning?
Well, we are gathering some of that information and have been already. I mean, we do the surveys, we list the number of classes that are offered using this model, and those are on our website. So we've got some analytics on that. We do surveys. We've got a LinkedIn group that people that have gone through the training can participate in. And the establishment of a community that we're sort of as a theme here is something that seems to be very important to maintain and to enhance. We've been laissez-faire about it to a certain degree. We offer the training, we offer faculty the opportunity to come for free to learn how to do this, to incorporate it into their classes, and then we let them go and sort of see let them do what they want with it. And so the answer, I think, is we can, because the platform is something that's online. We can easily go in and lurk in their classes and see how they've adopted and adapted what we do. And quite honestly, when we're in the conducting of the training, if we want them to adopt it, we tell them to adapt it. We expect there to be change, and we expect them to do something with it. So it's not our baby, it's not our program. And the easiest way to see that is to just log into their class, into their session, and to see what they do. So we haven't done that, but I think that would be the way to accomplish it.
Wonderful, wonderful example of being unobtrusive and using archival data collection systems. It's a great answer, very sophisticated. Do we have questions at this point or comments from anyone?
As Jim said, this has been, by intent, very much focused on methodology. Would like to sort of segue and ask any of the panelists who would like to comment, try to put a face on adoption. We've very intentionally differentiated between those terms in terms of adoption of an innovation versus its adaptation. We've had good stories of adaptation, but who and how was that adoption decision made at your college or institution?
I think I can answer that, at least for our institution. As I said before, we are so employer-focused, and the reason that we even met Elaine and Teresa at SCADE and got started with project-based learning was because we were put together by an industry person from Progress Energy, which is the energy provider in our states. So it had nothing to do, per se, with academia, us getting together. Again, we were put together because of an industry person who services both of us. He runs an internship program for Progress Energy. So he gets students from Teresa in their area. He gets students from me to work in the power plants at our area. And he put us together. So, again, it was like the proof was already there. He's saying this works in industry. This is what you need to be doing too. So it was no question of, are we going to do this? It's, we're going to do this because this is what our industry is asking for.
I have a challenge for Synergy to do some adoption. I understand we're going to be Skyping with Gerhard and Celeste tomorrow. We could do it in Blackboard. We could do it easily. I could set it up. It does everything Skype does and more. So if you want to adopt that technology as a demonstration for everybody here, if we can eat our own dog chow, as it were, we can practice what we preach.
Sounds great. Sounds great. A follow-up question for Angela. So you had strong incentive to adopt the technology gateway.
We had direction from industry.
You had direction.
Let me make this very clear. At our school, we're required to have advisory boards for our technical areas, and basically, if I want to make a change in my program, I better have some data from my industry people saying, yes, this is what we need, this is what we want, this is the right thing to do. I'm not saying we never have leeway to try something, but our catalyst is industry asking for it. And so once industry asks for it, and Technology Gateway is fairly low cost, so it's not a matter of do we have the money to do this, it's if industry wants it, that's what we're going to do. We're very much customer focused, at least at our institution. I guess everybody has, different cultures or whatever, but at ours, if industry says they want it and we can possibly find a way to do it, we do it. There's no question.
Fascinating answer. Let's stick with that just for a moment. So, Angela, imagine yourself being Elaine Craft.
Wow. That's a reach, man. I mean, anyway. Y'all know Elaine. I don't have to say anymore. So.
Elaine's always doing 12 things at once.
Exactly.
But every once in a while, she might, of course, have a thought like, I'd like to scale this up big time to a whole lot of places. Who should she selectively reach out to try to reach adopters? For example, would Chamber of Commerce's be a reasonable place for her to go to? Are there certain industry sectors that the Gateway makes the most sense for? Your answer suggests that that kind of target marketing might be more effective than going to colleges themselves.
It has been for us.
Mm-hmm.
kind of like I said, when we had people who were on our advisory board who came in, they were witnesses, okay? They gave their testimonies at our meetings. And so immediately, people that I had talked with before, might have sent them 1 or 2 graduates or something. Now they want my cell number. And, I mean, I've had a call since I've been here. That's how often I get these calls. What I really want is for somebody to come up with how are we going to get the high school students into technical programs, because we got the jobs covered. That's not the problem. I've got 25 students and I got 52 jobs. That's pretty much like it is from day to day. But when industry sees that it works, and I think they've been pretty dissatisfied for some time as to what we're producing, if you will. But when they see something that works and they see people who can come in and solve problems, again, without being, having a babysitter, they just jump on it like a bulldog on a poodle. I mean, they...
Okay.
Was that you or Elaine speaking there?
That was my take on Elaine, I guess.
Okay.
You can't get, more of a catalyst for doing something than industry saying they want it. And, we're getting other schools. We have a high school that we're partnered with now on our own grant project and another community college. And what really caused them to say, yeah, we want to be your partner is listening to industry. Because even though they're a high school, again, they're sending them to us. It's a pipeline. We have that end of the pipeline covered. It's, so they're, in fact, and Wayne School of Engineering is one that we're partnering with, and I guess this is kind of like another adaption thing. So right now they're a 9th through 12th grade innovative high school. So students would receive their high school diploma and a 2-year technical degree typically at the same time. They have now decided that coming this fall, they're going to start that program at that school in the 6th grade. So that students are not waiting to the 9th grade to learn how to think. They start now in the 6th grade. So now we only send them through kindergarten through 5th grade, not teaching them how to think. We make that transition now in the 6th grade because industry and employers at large is saying, this is what we need. We need you to start it earlier. And it's taken them 3 years to get that plan together. But that's what's happening at the high school that we're partnered with. It'll start this fall.
Great examples. Sometimes we use the very fancy language of push and pull to make this distinction between, having what we think is a good product or service and trying to get people interested, when all of us know that the best way to do that is to identify some segment, some market where there is demand, where there's pull to help receive those materials and technologies and services and make good use of them. Yeah.
I wanted to say 2 things. First thing is, I think this panel is excellent. I mean, this is exactly the type of discussion that I was really needing, so thank you. One thing about the process versus outcomes, I think the question is, for me, I see this, and we in the Bridge to Biotech, we have a toolkit, and we definitely want to start measuring student the impact on students of these programs, but we would like to relate it to the toolkit. The only issue is I don't see us ever having a large enough data pool to be able, in terms of number of colleges, to be able to relate anything to our, I think we have like 20 tools in our toolkit. So that's one thing that I want to ask about. Even if we were to put all the funding and energy into doing that, which we're really interested in, will we even be able to have any coherent data that we can actually use? That was the first question. And then the second question about self-report for the tools that you were mentioning earlier, that you can't rely only on a self-report from the colleges to say that they are doing things, because they might be understanding it differently, or they might be, misinterpreting what you're saying. And we were thinking, I think I learned that from Jim, is that a good way to bypass that is to triangulate, and maybe to survey the students also on their perception of whether or not those tools were being used at the college. But I'm thinking there could be a third way to really do a triangulation, and I'm wondering if you have any suggestions on that. It could be the focus group and just going there. But that's a lot of resources too, so yeah, if you have any suggestions. The 2 questions, yeah.
From anyone here on the panel, how can she best increase the number of ways that she learns? Carl, what would you do?
Not a clue. Well, I guess let me just, what we did, now I'll tie this back to what we did, and this ties in, obviously the business aspect is very, very important as well. But what we found out is that as we bring colleges into the network, is that some are really, really gung-ho, you know, not like a bulldog on a poodle, they just don't want to do that. But some colleges are really gung-ho like that, and some aren't. And our old approach was, it was an all-or-nothing approach to get into the network, okay? And so through some brainstorming processes between the distributed leadership and everybody has a voice and all this stuff that we have as part of that group, is that we decided to create a three-tier level of membership where you have, like, I think it's partner, member, and associate, I think is what we named it eventually. Yeah, Slacker was the one that we had to throw out. But anyway, okay. Okay, and so that was one problem we ran into with implementation, is that, yeah, everybody wants to sign on, but there's some responsibilities involved with that. You just can't sign on, take what you need, and not put anything back. And that's what we were starting to run into a little bit. And so we created the three-level membership into the network of colleges for the Convergence Technologies. And that seems to be making a difference now, because you have some people who really, really want to do it. It's all intrinsic, mostly. You just have to have people who really want to do this, and if they don't, then, you know, then we can't spend a lot of time with them. We will, but based on their own input.
Do you have, this is very interesting, Carl, do you have, let's say, an instrument or a simple protocol for assessing readiness? The extent to which they may be, any particular college may be ready to both, you know, have the capacity to implement themselves as well as be motivated to do so?
Basically, actions speak louder than words, I guess would be the best way to say that. The business point is key, of course. Can you tie that back into local industry, and then show us what you got? Okay, I mean, if you want to be part of it, and you are a big contributor, you're involved in the meetings and go to the different professional development activities, and just being part of the process instead of just sitting on the sidelines and just watching things go by. So that's pretty much how we can tell that we're being successful, by the amount of participation.
I've got a toolkit, and I have no idea how many people are using it and why. And I was thinking about ways to find out if they're using it. And what it comes down to is incentivizing them. So the $100 pizza party, the survey, surveys are kind of sucky, but something in order to get them to find out what they're actually doing and using. And for me, as I said, I can lurk in their classrooms. I can look and see what they're doing. To find out if they are actually engaged in some of the practices that we've been teaching them. So a way to incentivize, and if you show up in their class, if there's a way that you can mentor and to encourage the use of it, that's what I'm thinking of doing, because as I said, we've been completely laissez-faire. It's like, here's this wonderful thing, and the world's going to change because you're going to do this, and so you obviously need to be doing what I'm doing. And that doesn't work. Even though we've got this great crisis in California for education and funding, the model that we've got can radically change that, but it is bloody hard to get people to change. So incentivizing in some way, give them $100.
I think something else you might could try, and we haven't done this, we focus more again on the outcomes, but if you take your toolkit, and I have no idea what your toolkit is, but you have those lists of things, and you get maybe some brainstorming from your employers. What skills do these kids have that you hadn't seen before? Why are they different? Why is this coming out? And then try to kind of do a reverse engineering. Which of those tools could have contributed to that outcome? And then in that way, maybe you can see what is most effective from an employer standpoint, and not just what from academics we thought was going to be effective that maybe did or did not pan out. But maybe you could just come at it from the other direction and see what was most useful.
Yeah, very interesting. One last question, perhaps. We're just before 10 o'clock.
Hi, I'm Dave Cedrone. I'm here with the Baytech Group. The theme of sensitivity analysis just keeps coming up for me in this conversation of what are the few things that have the really biggest impact, and how do you identify those and put your resources on studying those as opposed to studying everything in the process. And it started out with the whole concept of fidelity versus adaption, if I have the language right. I'm new to the group. So I understand the importance of allowing for adaption to meet local needs, but there's a cost to doing that. And I haven't heard enough conversation about, when we're really trying to scale, and scale significantly, if you have 373 adaptations of a particular process, did you really need 373? Or would 7 have sufficed? And how do we know that? Because there's a cost to 373.
Yes.
To supporting that
Yes.
or maintaining any fidelity to that. And so I began to draw a little diagram of sort of adaptation allowance. So as you start to think about steps of the process, there may be elements of the process that you would have a wide latitude, and you could do this 7 different ways, and it really doesn't matter from a cost standpoint or from an outcome standpoint, where there are certain other pieces of the process that are absolutely critical to the outcome or would have a really big impact on cost. So I just, that's what struck me from this whole conversation is how do we put that filter to some of this discussion to really start to understand what are the elements that are most crucial and target those.
Excellent, insightful comment.
I know what we've done with working with SCATE. They get us back together once a year, and we'd look at best practices. And let's say that I had adapted a rubric a certain way, and then I go to my meeting and I'm with the people from my discipline, and then we've all brought what we've done, and we were looking at it. Oh, that's way better than what I had. Then I chunk mine, or his is better, but let's put these 2 together, and that's great. And then we keep kind of like group adapting. So we go off and we say, well, this worked really good because blah blah blah, and then bring it back to the group. So it's like we go out and then we turn around a little bit, and we come back in and we turn around a little bit, and so we end up with kind of like a repository of things that seem to work great, kind of all the way around. And so then again, the adaptations that we do are very minor at that point. They're not. I wouldn't say we're costly, if that makes sense, because we're all kind of working off the same pot of stew, but maybe I add a little salt or pepper, and he might add something else. But it's still the same building block, if that makes sense. And so we just keep evolving each year after 6 years to come up with this repository so that it doesn't just keep, permeating like crazy. It keeps coming back around and being refined, if you will.
Why don't we leave it there? Thank you very much for the excellent comments and questions.